Hey everyone, welcome back to the big stage here at Texas Scorecard's booth at the Republican Convention in Houston, Texas. I'm Michael Quinn Sullivan. Great to be with you here for a little bit this afternoon. I'm sitting down with a longtime friend of mine, Wade Miller. He may not want to admit that. Known each other a long time. So proud of the great work that he has done working with some real champions and heroes in the conservative movement, and currently serves as the executive director of Citizens for Renewing America. Did I get it? Am I close?
You got that correct.
Woo! Yeah. We were being cute before we started, and I went through in my head about 19 variations of that, and I suddenly thought, oh no, I'm going to use one of these wrong variations. So anyway, he's undoing America? I don't know. So no,
it's a newer entity, so understand why you might not quite have it memorized.
Okay, so you now live in not Texas.
Right.
You're in just the horrible wasteland of the Washington, D.C. area. But Texas obviously still has a near and dear place to your heart. Why? I want to first ask you, why is it important for you guys to be at the Republican convention in Texas when you could be some other places?
Sure. So first off, I blame Chip Roy for me going to D.C. because he hired me.
Blame
as chief
Chip
of
Roy
staff.
for anything. I'm all on board.
Yeah. So it's his fault, first of all. But the reason we're here is because at the end of the day, we understand that while it's important to fight at the federal level, the solutions to the future of America are not going to come from Washington, D.C. Even if we have a wave election and we elect 300 Republicans, we're going to have 100 conservatives. They'll be outvoted. We're not going to get all the things we need to do. So it's really important that we start actually cultivating red state sanctuaries, as we call them, which are strong Republican states that can start standing up to and opposing federal overreach. But in order to do that, you need to have the fundamentals right. And there's only a handful of states that we can start working on that on. Florida, perhaps, Texas, perhaps, Oklahoma, perhaps. But they all, obviously, as you know, they all have a long ways to go. In Texas, they've got a real good champion, but there's a lot of work. In Florida, they've got a really good champion in Governor DeSantis, but they've got a long ways to go there, too. And in Texas and Oklahoma, there's still a lot of weak leadership. And so there's a long way to go. But if we don't have those red state sanctuaries, then we don't really have a country in the future. They're going to start bowing down, doing whatever the federal authorities demand of them, using that as an excuse to not act, and that's just not a winning solution. So
wait, how important is it, as as I follow you on Twitter, as we chat occasionally on conference calls, you're all over the place. How important is what's going on in Texas to the other 57, whatever it is, states that there are?
Sure.
How important is Texas to the rest of the country from a, Texas doing conservative things?
Sure. So it's the most populated Republican state. So when Texas does something, other states pay attention. And so if we don't have Texas leading, then we're not going to have Tennessee. We're not going to have, other states like Arizona. We're not going to have other states like Georgia leading the way. You have to have large, strong contingents, like the Texas contingent in D.C. is strong. So if the state of Texas is doing well, then the federal entities there are going to have to defend that, and they're going to have to push that, and they're going to have to go out on Fox News, and they're going to have to defend those efforts and stand by them. And that will show the other states that, and it'll start raising questions. Well, Texas is doing this. Why aren't we? And unfortunately, if you go on an issue-by-issue basis, Texas isn't number one on a lot of these issue areas. In fact, They're not even close. And it should be. That's kind of the aura and mystique of Texas, is it's bigger and better than everyone else. But at a policy basis, we're running behind on a lot of other states, and we need to catch up.
Yes, you're here in the middle of the 10,000 strong Republican convention, and everyone's competing over how many elephant lapel pins and donkey boots or whatever kind of things you might have at a Republican convention. For a lot of us, we hear Texas. We're every statewide office since 1998, and go down the line. But from your review, as now forgive me, something of an outsider, how strong do you see Texas from an actual policy perspective now?
So there's two ways to answer that. There's just straight up, like, how are they in a kind of in a vacuum? And I would say it's getting better, but there's a long ways to go. And then there's an analysis there that is, how good are they doing compared to how good they should be doing
There you go, yeah.
based on how many conservatives and how many Republicans are in the state. And that one is way behind. So from that analysis, Texas is way behind where it should be from a policy perspective on a whole bunch of different issues. You know, until they had the heartbeat bill, Texas was way behind other states on pro-life legislation. When you look at guns, Texas is still lagging behind a whole bunch of states in a variety of areas. They made some progress last session, but issue by issue, you know, you go issue by issue, Texas lags, and it really shouldn't, and it lags behind states. Some of these states are purple states.
Right.
I mean, there's some Democrat states that have more conservative election integrity laws than Texas has, and that's, you know, why is that? That doesn't make any sense at all. And you know, you dig down into the reason for that. Well, look who's leading the Republican Party in the House, the Texas House. You know, not a lot of conservative leadership there, and there should be. And the problem is, you know, when I tell people in Washington, D.C., that the Texas Republican Party actually allows Democrats to be in charge of the committees, they think I'm joking. They think that can't possibly be true. And it's just, it's amazing that that's still a thing.
Right.
They kill all of the good bills. Republicans who don't want to have to deal with good bills, they'll kick it off that way so that the Democrats do the dirty work for them. And as an outsider, now that I've kind of explained that, there's a growing contingent in D.C. now that I've explained this to, they're just dismayed. They can't believe that a conservative state allows the Democrat Party to basically destroy their agenda. It's just, it's unfathomable.
You know, so, something you mentioned a moment ago, and I want to key in on this for just a brief second. I want to talk about border policy, which I know near and dear to your heart. But that you mentioned a moment ago that for a long time Texas was kind of dropping actually in the pro-life ratings, and demonstrating, I think, your point about how Texas could still be a leader is with one piece of legislation a year ago, suddenly Texas is at the forefront of defending life. So
after 19 years of Republican control.
After
that's
19
how long
years,
it took them to get that done.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yet it's not like it's an impossible task. It just requires doing it.
Yeah, leadership.
And I think that's the fundamental difference here is that we could be doing so much more.
Right.
So many opportunities to do things.
And I work with a lot of staffers on a variety of areas, state level, federal level, staffers for governors, and they often talk about their governors working with and trying to work on legislation with members. I can't remember the last time I heard Greg Abbott was working with a legislator on an issue. I just can't remember. Like, when was the last time that he was actively down at the State House working with any senator, House member in Austin to get a bill done, to get it written? That just doesn't exist. There's lacking leadership in Texas to get the conservative agenda forward, and it's a statewide problem, and it's a House problem, and a little bit of a Senate problem, although the Senate's been one of the brighter spots in recent years. And
if I understand you correctly, what that creates then is a national problem, because we end up not having the kind of gravity within the policy end of the conservative that we could have with Texas.
Well, nothing drives me crazier than when I'm in D.C., because that's where I work now, and I have people from other state delegations tease me about having better gun laws or better pro-life laws.
Right.
Or, it grates me as a Texan to hear that. Like, I hate that more than anything, because I like to give people grief, and I have no response to that, because they're right.
They're right.
They're right. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys were out very early and very loudly around the idea that what we see going on at the border, we're now at 35,000 plus documented interactions between law enforcement and illegal aliens. That's the ones that they document. Say, hey, we met this person. This person's not here legally. They're in our country illegally, and so check. Then all these others you don't know about. And you and your colleague Russ Faulkner, they were very loud saying, this is an invasion. We have an invasion going on. Why is it that Texas, we are slap dab in the middle of where this invasion is happening. We're the ones being invaded. New York's not being invaded, except for maybe by some Canadians who want cheaper gas, or maybe, I don't know. Kansas isn't being invaded. Texas is being invaded, and yet we don't see any of the folks who could, like the Governor Abbott, not calling this what it is, an invasion. Why?
So let me back up here. And, one of the reasons you had trouble getting the name right is because we're a newer entity, And so coming out of the Trump administration, my boss was the OMB director for Trump, which is, Steve Bannon will say that's the third most powerful position, president, chief of staff, and OMB director. That's what Steve Bannon says. And so he was a very prominent cabinet official in the Trump administration. And he basically had a conversation with President Trump and said, we've got to have an entity that will take the ideas of the Trump administration and kind of the America First movement and conservatism, be a safe place for those, continue to develop them, get ready for the next administration, whoever that may be, whether it's Trump or someone else, and then make sure that we re-implement those ideas. So this entity was formed right after Trump left office, and one of the first priorities was Russ knew that the border's not going to be secured from the D.C. Biden's not going to do anything on this. Secretary Mayorkas isn't going to do anything on this. We've got to come up with a state solution. So our idea was, and we worked with Ken Cuccinelli out of the Trump administration as well, and some others out of the Trump administration to come up with this plan, which is to declare that President Biden is violating Article 4, Section 4 to secure states from invasion.
Right.
And if that's the case, then Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 is a power that the governor has that he can invoke that makes him the commander-in-chief of Texas to repel that invasion. And the reason that that is important is because if you don't declare that authority and you try to do anything on the border, what will be argued is that that's a violation of U.S. v. Arizona. They've already said that states can't help implement federal border immigration law. Well, declaring an invasion is a declaration of power outside of immigration law. For the same reason that Title 42 has been effective, because Title 42 is a health provision outside of immigration law, which is why it was so effective at being able to turn people back. Declaring an invasion is also outside of immigration law. So what we're asking is for the governors to make that declaration, and then anyone they get, they can take back. You can do a wellness check and give them water, food, but you take them right back across the border at a port of entry, send them right back across, and continue doing that up and along the entire border. I think that the reason Abbott won't do that, and this is pure speculation because he hasn't specifically said why, is because his inner circle is averse to anything that might be controversial. And so if they think that it might affect them 1 point in approval ratings, they're not going to do it. They're very slow. This is why I think that overall there's just bad leadership, because they're very slow to act on anything or lead on anything. And this is why just this last week, Governor DeSantis said that Governor Abbott needs to do this. And so I don't know why he won't do it. To his credit, Representative Matt Krause requested a legal opinion on this from Attorney General Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton has declined to issue an opinion, so I'm not happy with that. I hope he changes his mind. But we did go to Arizona. We got Mark Brnovich, the Attorney General of Arizona, to issue an opinion on this. And Mark Brnovich said this is a valid action. Kari Lake, who is the leading government candidate for governor in Arizona, has adopted our plan on her campaign website. If she wins there, I'm very confident Arizona will do this. So to your question, why isn't Governor Abbott doing this? I don't know why, other than he just doesn't actually care about open borders, or he doesn't understand this legal argument, or he just doesn't want to do it for political reasons because he's afraid of any controversy that might upset the cart. But I don't buy into that last scenario, because I just don't buy that in Texas it will hurt your political chances if you're strong on the border. And We're not asking for anything controversial here. We're not asking for basically anything that wasn't already being done under Title 42. Literally just apprehend people, return them back across the border, and don't listen and don't let the feds get in the way and stop you. Just do it under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. And he just won't do it. So,
and kind of backing up your point that the political viability of this. 2 days ago, we had a Republican win that special election. Like, it's going to be a hard race.
20-point swing.
Yeah, big swing there for a Republican winning a seat in U.S. Congress, a seat that has been held by a Democrat for 150 years.
On a border security platform.
On a border security platform, indicating, I think, to a lot of us that this is a safer issue than a lot of us lily white Anglo Republicans want to admit. Every time I'm in South Texas, everyone I visit with from the border region, all Republican and particularly Democrats, are furious with what they see as an invasion.
And if you can't
the politics seem to work
243,000 people, I'm sorry, I think it was 2.4 million people in the last year, and all of the cartel violence and the cartels having operational control of the border, transnational gangs, fentanyl, the effects that this is having on our social safety nets, hospitals, schools. If you can't say that that's an invasion, then I don't know what is. I mean, I know that most people think of, and when they think of invasion, they think of a military. But invasion is just others trespassing on a domain unwanted.
Right.
This is an invasion. When you have 2.4 million unwelcome, illegally crossing the border, cartels actively participating in that action, that is an invasion. So there should be no hesitation by the governor of Texas on an issue that has wide support, even in Texas, even amongst Democrats. There's a significant portion that want strong borders. It should be a no-brainer. Like, do this. This will actually solve the problem. So either he doesn't want to solve the problem, he doesn't understand this is the issue, or they just are not doing it out of pure political concern. And if it's the last, that's not what we elect people to do. We elect people to lead, not to look at polling and to shy away from doing the right thing.
All right, so Wade, before we end up here, how can folks track the work of Citizens for Renewing America, and how can they track you?
Sure, so AmericaRenewing.com. I'm on Twitter. We're on Twitter. You can find us AmericaRenewing.com. We have issue areas. We dive into everything. We're trying to not focus so heavily on fiscal, economic issues because Russ was the OMB director. He knows those issues.
Right.
We want to fix those problems. The problems America facing are the cultural issues: borders, critical race theory, social emotional learning, diversity, equity, inclusion, pornography in schools, the whole gamut of what is actually destroying our culture. That's been more of our focus. We'll focus on taxes and balanced budgets, but that's not what's animating people at the dinner table. People at the dinner table care about what's happening to America culturally. It's at their HR departments. It's being forced to get a vaccine. It's being forced to take diversity, equity, inclusion trainings at work. Right. It's all of these things. We're having to recognize gender pronouns. So if we don't do that, then we're going to lose America, and taxes and budgets aren't going to win the day. It's winning our culture back, and then we can have the electoral majorities to go back and fix those other issues we've been talking about. So AmericaRenewing.com, and I'm on Twitter. I think it's Wade Miller 1776 or something like that.
I was going to say it if you do. Wade Miller 1776 on Twitter, renewingamerica.com, renewingamerica.com.
America Renewing, sorry.
America Renewing, yeah. America Renewing. We'll
America
get it right
Renewing,
eventually. Yeah. We'll edit that or something.
Yeah.
All right. Wade Miller, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.